Great.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We still have a couple of more people in the waiting room, so give them a moment to join, and then we'll get started. First, let me just introduce myself. My name is Gun, and I'm the communications manager at LIDC. I've been emailing with you. And we, as you probably know, LIDC is a membership organization that deals with research and international development. And we also do a lot of events, including student events, which is what this is. One thing that students are always keen to learn about is, how can I get that first job? How do I get the job that I want? What steps can I do? What should I not do? All of these things. And so today I've invited a few people who have been there and found their way into international development and have had interesting and great careers and wonderful experiences. So I have invited them to speak to you guys. And then after that, we can, there's Q&A, so you can ask them questions as well. So just a few practical, some practical information. We are recording this event and we'll publish it on the website for those of students and graduates who are unable to join today. And if you want to tweet from this event, you're more than welcome to do so. Our Twitter handle is LIDC_UK. So that's that. I think we will, like, you came here to hear from the speakers and not from me. So I think we'll start with the first speaker, who's Anders Lee, who's joining us today from Singapore. Anders has a fascinating background. And I know we always get a lot of questions about how to get into international development when you already worked in different fields. So he's a prime example of that. So without further ado, I will hand over to Anders to give his presentation.
Thanks, Gun. Let me first put up my presentation. Is everyone able to see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Or is there? Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, and thanks, Gun. And it's really nice to reconnect to the Bloomsbury student environment and reconnect to London. I did my master's at SOAS in development studies, and I've been wanting to go back to revisit London for quite a while. But of course, you know, with the COVID pandemic at the moment, haven't been able to go back to London. But hopefully, I'll be able to visit London again pretty soon. But of course, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about, you know, starting out a career in international development. So maybe I'll just start with a brief introduction about myself and what I've been doing. So I'm Anders. I'm currently based in Singapore, and but I work for UNESCO Myanmar. I've been based in Myanmar for the last 2.5 years. So I've worked in, I guess there are actually a lot of people like myself in development. You know, you work for a few years in the corporate world, and then I guess you find your soul, and then you're like, okay, I want to go do something else that's more meaningful, I suppose. So I worked in a couple of investment bank for about 6 years. And then I think it was around my second year, I already knew that this is not what I wanted to do long term. So I think that was when I've already started thinking very seriously about making a career switch. And, you know, I think when you're someone, if you're growing up and you want to be a teacher and you want to do things that's a bit more human, it's easy to already think about making that switch. You know, for me, I just saw what I was doing previously as sort of a means to get to somewhere I wanted to be. And I did my master's at SOAS in development studies, and then I've moved to Myanmar almost immediately after I graduated. So I first started out as a communications intern at UNOPS Myanmar, And then I was doing that for about 6 months. And then I moved on to a research consultancy. And before I moved on to another research consultancy at ACLID, which is an organization that tracks and monitor data, collects data on political violence and demonstrations around the world. And then at the same time, I'm juggling a second consultancy at UNESCO Myanmar, and specifically in the education sector. So as I was preparing my, as I was preparing my slides, especially this particular slide, I was thinking to myself, like as I was starting out in my career, I guess for myself, my career switch, what were the questions, or what was sort of the advice I wish someone have told me before I started out this career? And I guess you can take this as sort of like an exercise to assess and reflect on yourself, whether international development is actually a career that you actually really want to do. And if you want to do that, how you can position yourself or within this very broad sector. Because of course, a lot of times when you tell people I study development studies, and people are like, what is that? Like, it sounds so broad. Are you developing robots? Are you developing bridges? What are you doing? And I think that really speaks to how broad this whole sector is. And so it's I guess if you do not want any spoilers and you want to enjoy the whole experience yourself, then please feel free to tune out for the next few minutes. But of course, I've written them as questions for you to sort of think about and reflect on yourself and how you see yourself within this international development context. So the first question I think everyone should always ask themselves is a career in international development for you? A lot of times we think of it as you see all these examples of people are doing work that are, I guess, more meaningful and stuff like that. But there are also certain aspect of it that perhaps is less spoken about. You might feel like, oh, this is really something I want to do. But at the same time, are you suited, or are you prepared for that sort of very nomadic life? I mean, if you're working at the UN, if you continue work at the UN long-term as a long-term career path for yourself, what's going to happen is you're likely going to move from country to country a lot. And that might not be something that everyone enjoys. There are people who enjoy stability. There are people for myself, I come from a big city like Singapore. I want my big city sort of activities, and I would probably struggle if I lived in like a small village or a rural town. So these are really very real consideration that I think sometimes people don't think about enough before they sort of embark on this career in international development. And what's going to happen is, some people are within a few years, they're like, oh, actually this is probably not for me. And yeah, so I think it's good to already start thinking about that, even if you don't have a very clear idea if you have an answer for that already. And I think the second question you can ask yourself is, do you want to work, especially I'm speaking about this more as like an international organization or the UN agencies, for example. Do you want to work at the HQ level, or do you want to work at the regional offices? If you work at HQ, if you work in regional offices, you get to live in the big cities. Perhaps you might feel more comfortable, but the work you might feel that the work is a little bit more mundane. A lot of times you might be doing coordination work with other field officers, or because they are sort of like the dissemination channels as well. And what you end up doing is you might be coordinating with a lot of other officers to cascade some of the new programs and some of the new directives. And if you want to work in the field offices, which is what I'm doing at the moment, are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for 5 months of rainy weather in Yangon, really, really bad rainy season, flooding and things like that? So there's a very real consideration, also adapting to the local context, and also adjusting yourself in the sense that every time you move to a new place, a new field office, you have to rebuild your friendship, you have to rebuild a social network and things like that. And I guess related to the previous question is there a region that you would like to work in? For myself, I knew when I graduated, I wanted to move back to Southeast Asia to work. I mean, I'm from Singapore. I recognize the privilege growing up in Singapore, and that, you know, there are a lot of other countries in this region with plenty of potential, and we don't have as strong of a sort of multilateral channel to in terms of development sort of work within Southeast Asia. So I was thinking perhaps the best channel to work within this region is through the UN sort of system. So I think that's something you should also think about, because of course, at the start, I would usually advise not to try and specialize and try to keep your options open. But this is something that you can think about already in terms of already setting the steps within your pathway to the career that you want. And the last question would be, is there a thematic area or a specific sector that you're interested in? So thematic area would be like, would you want to work more on gender issues, human rights issue, inclusion issues, or migration issues? Or if within a sector, you know, as I mentioned earlier just now, you know, international development is actually really, really broad. So is there a specific sector that you actually want to specialize in or start to build your expertise in? And I think, again, you don't have to make that decision early on in your career, but you can already start thinking about how this all comes together to where you want to be in the future. And you know, specific sectors would be like things like public health, education, or you want to work more of socioeconomic development. So that might be, you might be looking at somewhere like UNDP, for example, or even if there is already a specific function that you're actually particularly keen on, and that would be like more generalist sort of functions, that would be HR, administrative work. Are you more interested in communications, monitoring and evaluation, project management, programmatic work, or if you want to build your career as more of a technical specialist advisor sort of role? And if that's the case, then you might be looking at getting a PhD at some point in your career. And also you have to think about if you are suited, if that sort of contract actually suits your lifestyle, or if you actually like that sort of contract, because a lot of times if you're looking at the INGOs, you're looking at the UN agencies, especially if you want to work in research or technical advisor sort of role, a lot of times this tend to be short-term project-based kind of contracts. So you might be moving from contract to contract, or even offices to offices a lot. And you have to think about if that's something that you actually enjoy doing. And I guess once you have completed that exercise where you reflect on how you can position yourself in this sector, is to then taking that step of starting out. And I think this is probably the most daunting part of this whole journey. And I think if you see it as a journey, whether if you're starting out or whether you're starting out again like myself, if you see it as a journey, it becomes less daunting, and you sort of be kinder to yourself and not be so hard on yourself. I mean, we are of course in a pandemic, and it's probably going to be quite difficult to find a job, and there will likely be a lot of challenges. You might not be able to move into the field offices, duty stations that you want to be, and these are all things that you know, adds additional challenge to what we already have. So I think, especially at the start, I think it'll be good to always keep your options open and to keep an open mind. If you can, of course, if you already know, you know, what you want to specialize in, I think you can still think about how these options can bring you to where you want to be. And I think as long as it keeps you on the path to where you want to be, then that's already good enough. I think as I was doing my career change sort of journey, you know, within this 2.5 years, what I find out is that, you know, a lot of times you see all these successful career change stories, and you start to feel, and you think, you know, career change is like, and I remember telling myself, oh, I'm gonna definitely complete this career switch within 6 months or within a year. And what I found out is that this is so much longer and so much more difficult than I expected, because there are really a lot of times where I'm struggling financially. You know, I just finished a master's, I've had to pay that off, and then I have to do an internship and then do another consultancy. And these are things that, you know, it really hits you, and then it can really pull you down. But I think if you continue seeing it as a journey, then it makes it easier as long as you stay on that path where you want to be. And I think that's already good enough. And I think keeping your options open means that you are able to take more opportunity to gain skills in different areas. And all these skills come in handy in ways and you don't think about. For example, when I was a communications intern, did I think that I was going to do communications as a long-term career goal? Not really. But at the same time, what I did at that internship really helped me in some of the work that I'm doing now at UNESCO Myanmar. So for example, you know, a lot of my work involves preparing policy briefs, preparing reports of different styles, and learning that from my internship really helped me. And also last year, we decided to launch our own Facebook page, and we are a very small office. We don't have a communications person. So what we do is each team sort of prepare their own communications material. And again, my previous experience really helped me. And you might feel like, oh, it's just about preparing the Facebook posts, or it's just preparing the communications material. But again, it's more than that, because when you're doing it as part of your project, you really see how it links to the work that you do, you know, not only just building up the visibility, and you can also use that platform in many ways to link it to your project implementation. And I think the third point is, perhaps this is just like my personal view, but I think this is something that I definitely would like to see, you know, the development sector sort of shift into, and the shift is already happening, is that development is a partnership with the country that you're working in. So for example, if you're working in a field office, you know, and I think it will be good to always take time to immerse yourself in the history of the country, in the politics of the country. During the first year that I moved to Myanmar, I bought a lot of books, and I spent a lot of my weekends just reading up about Myanmar's history. And I think it's important to stay informed of what's happening in the country. It's important that you see it as more like a two-way sort of communication. It's not so much that we come in, especially when you're coming in as, I guess, in UN sort of term, is that you come in as an international staff. But at the same time, you do come in with some expertise because of just your experience coming in from certain countries. But at the same time, there is a lot for us to learn from the country that we are working in. And only through this two-way sort of learning, then you are able to find ways to navigate how you want to influence, how you want to advocate for certain policy changes or policy reforms. For example, in the sector that I'm working in, education in Myanmar, there are a lot of issues that are very politicized, and it's difficult to get through to the Ministry of Education on certain topics. But only through understanding the politics and the history of why certain things are the way they are, and also the dynamics of, you know, within the government itself, it really helps you to understand the workings of the country better, for you to be able to then support them and work with them as a partnership on how we can help them bring it to the direction that they want to. And the fourth point, I feel like this point comes up a lot in a lot of this sort of development kind of advice, but I guess I would just say it in a different way, is that yes, networking is important, but you don't have to feel like you have to do networking the sort of way that everyone sort of talks about. For example, when I first moved to Myanmar, people were telling me, oh, if you want a job, you should go to like all these popular bars or cafes where a lot of the development people hangs out in. And you try to insert yourself into all these groups, and it should really help you. But at the same time, I mean, if you have that personality and that's what you already enjoy doing, then of course that's great. But if you have, you know, if you like to network with people, or know people, or connect with people in a different way, there are so many different channels these days that you can use. You know, LinkedIn, for example, and even Facebook groups. There are plenty of Facebook groups that are specific for development professional, and you can also connect on a more personal level with people through Instagram or through Twitter, and that's how you can also know people and build that connection. So for me, that was how I got a job. And when I left when I completed my UN internship, so it took me about like 2 months before I started out at my next consultancy. And during this gap, I was really struggling, and I was thinking like, oh, should I continue staying in Myanmar? And it was one of my friends who referred me to, and it was just one friend. It's not like I had a huge group of friends. It was just one friend who referred me to this role. He sent me the job description, and then he was like, I think this might be something you could be interested in. And I said, yeah, I'm definitely interested in it. And then the same friend then sent me the job opening for my position at ACLED. And again, it's the same friend. It's this one friend that kept looking out for me. So my advice here is to keep your friends close, but also keep the friends who are looking out for you closer. And I think this last point is really the one that I guess I wanted to end this presentation on, is how you fight your demons. There are a lot of times, especially especially if you're doing a career switch, there are a lot of times where I start to doubt myself and question myself. And I'm like, should I just go back to my other job? It's so much easier to find a work. There are plenty of banking jobs in Singapore. And it's going to be so much easier for me to just go back and find a job there. And there's so many questions like, am I suited for international development? Do I have that personality? I'm not someone who enjoys networking, and it seems like networking is such a big thing. So there were a lot of things that came up to me as I was doing this career switch. And I think how you need to see it is, again, it's just to see it as a journey, and it doesn't really have to be perfect at the start. And again, a lot of people will say, send out as many applications as you can. And I think that's really very true. But also you need to be strategic about it. If you're sending out a lot of applications and you're just not hearing back from anyone after 3 weeks, then use your time productively. You sit down with your CV and sit down with your cover letter and go through them. How can I improve them? How can I rewrite them? And you send out a new version of it. If they're already not working and you keep sending them out, it's probably not gonna, the results that you're gonna yield is not gonna be very different. So you try to do things differently, use your time more productively. And if you just keep getting a lot of rejections, don't be disappointed, don't beat yourself up over it. The reality is that, just as an example, for the position, the UN communications internship that I applied for, I was told that over 100 people applied for it. So you just think about how many people apply for one internship, and a lot of UN internships are actually unpaid, and this is actually based in Myanmar. So there are a lot of duty stations that are probably more popular, and they might get way more applicants. So it is very competitive. So if you apply 50 different jobs and you don't hear back from anyone, don't beat yourself over it. Just remember that this is a huge pool of people who are applying for the same job. So it's important to try different ways. A lot of times employer only sees the CV that you send. So try different strategies in writing the same thing or telling this what you say on your CV in different ways. And I hope that would work out for you. And yeah, thanks very much. And thanks for listening. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anders. That's super, super useful. And I agree with so much of what you said, not least the 5-month rainy season in Yangon. So do think about that before you head off. But yeah, excellent advice. And also, when Anders did apply for his internship in Myanmar, I think there were 150 applicants and he was still selected. So well done, you. So the next person to speak is Sam. Sam also has a fascinating background. She's traveled quite widely and has a background from Latin America to LIDC. And now she's at UCL. So I'm very excited to hear from Sam about her career journey. So the floor is yours, Sam.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I have a couple of slides that I'm going to share with you. How do I go about doing that? That's the one I need. Okay. Here we are. So I thought I'd start off with what I do now, and then sort of look at how I got here. And my career in international development is probably not your typical one, in the sense that I've worked for about 10 years now in academia relating to international development. So at the moment I work at UCL as the Strategic Partnership Manager for the Africa Health Research Institute. I've been doing this for about 4 years now. And these two pictures that you have on the screen are the two sites of the Africa Health Research Institute. The one on the left is based in Durban, and the one on the right is based in Somkhele, both in the province of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And my role really is to facilitate research and to facilitate the relationship between the RE in South Africa and UCL in the UK. This is funded by the Wellcome Trust, who have 5 Africa and Asia programs across the world. And the work that we do focuses on science and science collaboration, but also includes education and upskilling of people on both sides. So I'd say probably my role at the moment is partnership manager at an operational and at an academic level. And just to provide some context for why South Africa as a sort of high middle income country would still qualify in my book as international development. The Somkhele site, which you can see on the right hand side, is based in Zululand, an area which has over 60% unemployment. It has ongoing issues, as it's a rural area, relating to the education levels, particularly among maths and science. That's a legacy of the apartheid system in South Africa. And we are looking at training local people, working with RE to train up local people to become scientists and project managers, and building the community into these 2 sites, which are that form the institute. So now, how did I get here? And I've framed it as a tale of journeys. And the first key journey is the one in red here, which is to South America. I got a university travel grant while I was a student. I studied social and political science, and I wrote my dissertation on urbanization and industrialization among women in Peru. And this came out really from this journey which I took to South America when I was in my 2nd year at university, which really prompted an interest in global development generally, and in global inequity more specifically. So after university, I didn't really have much of a clue what I wanted to do, and moved to Nepal, where I fairly typically taught English, and probably not quite so typically worked on a permaculture farm with a Nepali NGO based out there. And then decided to come back to the UK and do a Master's in Development Studies, as I did development studies at SOAS, and enjoyed it a great deal. And then, because my passion was for Latin America, started taking Spanish classes whilst I was in London, and got an internship to go and work in Costa Rica with a Costa Rican NGO that focused on ecotourism and conservation. So this is the purple journey. This is the arrow taking you to Costa Rica there. Now my internship was unpaid, which is a curse in international development, I would argue. And in order to be able to live, I worked freelance as a journalist for an English language newspaper while I was out there, and also started working with a company which at that point was just starting up. It's called DevX, it's a US company. I was one of a pool of freelance report writers. I think they paid me $25 per report when I started working with them. But after 6 months, they offered me a full-time post and didn't really mind where I was based. So I continued to live in Costa Rica. I then decided to move to Mexico at that point in time, which would have been around 2002. I was able, as long as I had an internet connection and phone, I was able to work from any point in the world. So I moved to Mexico. I set up the DevX Latin America team there. I did some consulting work for the World Bank on access to justice and the support that Mexican NGOs were providing to low-income groups on providing access to the justice system in Mexico. And then DevX wanted to set up an office in Europe. And so I moved to Barcelona and set up their European office, which is still there and still offers internships to people interested in working in international development. I then made a shift to working with an academic or research institute, which is where I've continued to work for the past decade. And I worked with an organization called Is Global. It's the Institut de Salud Global in Catalan. And there I worked on global health projects, managing the non-scientific aspects of those projects and collaborating a great deal with the operational side of staff who were setting up research projects relating to the big killers, TB, HIV, and malaria, and also looking at the smaller in terms of presence, but still severe diseases which affect people in low-income countries. And this, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's a sort of a 90-10 gap. So 90% of the diseases, infectious diseases that exist in the world, receive about 10% of the global research funding, whereas 10% of the diseases that exist in the world receive about 90% of the funding. And that's due to visibility and whether or not they impact people in richer countries. Whilst I was in Barcelona working with Is Global, I was managing partnerships in sub-Saharan Africa, in Latin America, and in Asia. And I developed project management training courses for people at the Universidad Eduardo Molane, which is the main university in Maputo in Mozambique, which I delivered in Spanish, and also training for partners, which we delivered in English in Kenya. In 2013, I then moved back to the UK and took up the position of manager of the London International Development Centre, which you're all obviously aware of because that's how you've come to be here today. That was sort of an overview of a range of projects, but global health was featured pretty predominantly in those, either in relation to sort of nutrition and stunting, in relation to agriculture, and really what I'm find fascinating and endlessly interesting about LIDC is the sort of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approaches that the organisation takes to looking at particular problems that affect people in low and middle income countries. Now, I wanted to close on thinking about reflecting a little on my experience of working in international development, of my experience in working overseas and working in different contexts. So thinking about what helped in terms of my personal journey rather than my professional journey, and what the sort of personal challenges are when working in international development. Anders talked quite a bit about thinking about whether or not you would be happy in the middle of the countryside, or whether you would be happier living in a city, and using that to frame how you present or how you address your career. And I think that is a really, really valuable and a very valid thing to think about. I also think things like language is immensely helpful when you are communicating with people whose language is not English, whose first language is not English. And one of the valuable lessons I learned from Latin America is that although as a native English speaker, I might feel a bit of an idiot trying out my bad language skills when somebody else's English is far better than my poor attempts at their language, it is really appreciated when you give it a go. Just be prepared to be laughed at when you make a few mistakes and inadvertently come up with something either rude or incredibly funny. A willingness to talk about your own culture and your own experiences, I found has always been helpful to break down barriers between cultures, opening yourself up a bit and not just grilling other people, and making a real effort to make friends with people in the countries and the cultures with which you're working, which is not always easy. It's I would say easier to fall into an international development community, but I think it's helpful in your professional and in your personal life to make that effort and put yourself out there and talk to people that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with at the beginning, but it provides an invaluable, rich experience for you and can support your aims as an international development specialist in terms of providing a richer understanding of the context in which you're working. And finally, very important to be aware, coming from a rich country as I have, of being aware of your own privilege, and aware that something that I would not consider to be an indicator of wealth may well be in another context. I also wanted to talk a little bit about challenges. I've spoken about cultural understanding and differences. That can be a real challenge when you're working overseas or working in this country with people from different cultures, and probably not right at the moment, given that COVID has stopped all travel. But when you are working overseas, I think loneliness can actually be a major issue, and is something that you have to be mentally prepared for, and try and be kind to yourself when you are in a situation where you're feeling maybe isolated from the culture in which you're living and the people that surround you. And I found personally sort of it difficult to deal with assumptions based on my sort of nationality or my appearance. And this, I think, is most definitely a sort of a white privilege aspect of living in the UK. But having people say, oh, you say that because you're British, took me aback, and actually makes you think, actually, do I say that because I'm British? Or do I just say that because I'm me? Or do I say that because of a myriad of different interacting aspects of who I am and my experience? I've also thought it'd be interesting to reflect a little bit on what I would do differently knowing what I know now. And I think the main thing I would have is a bit more confidence in myself, link up to international organizations and try and put myself forward. I think my career has been, I would describe it as random. And if I were younger now, I would have been more forthright and more pushy in taking up opportunities that were presented to me when I was overseas. So I'm just going to sort of summarize an overarching themes for what I hope you picked up today. My career's been winding rather than a straight line, and I think that's fine. I don't think you have to pick one route and follow it religiously to the bitter end. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, either with language or with your career. You know, you can change your mind and you can do something else, and that's fine. Every experience is something useful in the long run. I would say sometimes opportunities arise because you are simply in the right place at the right time, and there's no way for planning that. The only thing you can do is determine whether or not you will seize on those opportunities or not. You might find that if an opportunity has presented itself to you, you end up doing something which you had never planned for and never thought about, but which you find immensely rewarding and enjoyable. That's it from me. I'm going to stop sharing now. Thanks all for listening.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing your winding career journey. You say random, I say fascinating. I mean, I'm sure it'd be very interesting to meet you at a party, and you can tell us all about your trips around the world. So this event we're organizing together with UCL Institute of Education, and we thought we'd bring in a speaker who can also talk a bit about how you can have a career within international development that focuses more on more academia. So we are joined by Yasin Hassan, who will tell us about his PhD work. Hassan, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, the people in the West. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to me to join this multicultural talk, and thank you very much, LIDC. Specifically, my thanks goes to Gon, if I pronounce it correctly. My name is Yasin Hassan. Originally, I'm from Sudan. I moved to the UK in 2006. I started my higher education here. I've completed my first degree in Leeds, my master degree in Bradford, University of Bradford in forensic computing. Since then, I didn't work in computing. I just moved to the training because myself, I like working with young people. Here in the UK, I work with apprenticeship. Until now, I'm working with the apprenticeship because I believe on young people, and the young people, they are the engine of any economy. So I would like to take this opportunity and share with you what I'm doing now. And really, I fascinated with some talk. and Andreas about what they're doing now, and it is a motivation for me. Thank you very much. So I'm going to share with you my PhD proposal, just for you, if anyone interested to go further and pursue his PhD. This just, like hint. Okay. So my sorry, I don't. Yes. So my topic, it is in women education, and how women education doing in vocational education to contribute to the economy, specifically to countries such as Saudi Arabia. And because Saudi Arabia government, they put huge investment on vocational education. The idea is to shift the economy from oil-based economy to knowledge-based economy. So they have got very interesting project, and I'm going to talk about the project later. So I have got very nice supervision team. Prof. David Goll, he is the knowledgeable in vocational education, and I have got Dr. Enish, and she is interested in gender because my research in women education. So this is like a snapshot of Saudi Arabia vocational education structure. And start here, there is TVTC, which is stand for Technical Vocational Training Corporation. And this combination is seen any vocational training in the countries. They have got two parts. The local colleges, the TVTC runs the local colleges, and this is across the country. But in 2012, they need to robust the education, the vocational education, and they started a program or a project called College of Excellence. The idea of the College Excellence is to invite Western colleges to run this program. Myself, I joined this program in 2014 via Pearson International, which had a college in this project. Because in Saudi Arabia they have got gender segregation in education. Female, they have got their own colleges, and male, they have got own colleges. The program, they need to run the training for both male and female equally. Depends on this segregation. Therefore, in Saudi Arabia, you will not find male teach female or female teach male. So my research problem statement, there is historical socio-economic and political condition affect female education. We need to look at, or the research needs to look at this. The female haven't encouraged enough in vocational education, and this one of the nightmare for the female education, because the private sector, they are not involved very well to recruit the graduated vocational students, the female. Also, there is a lack of research measuring female vocational education contribution, and that's why I conduct this research. And actually the main idea, not just to look on this problem, but to say thank you to the Saudi government, because they are very keen to educate female, in spite of there is some issue regarding the families. They don't like their girls to be educated. This down to the social cultural background. The aim of the study is, does the College of Excellence, the new project model, make a positive impact to attract female into vocational education? What are the gender dynamics of the social cultural practices that affect female vocational education? Because in Saudi Arabia, the female, they didn't travel alone. They need like male guardianship to travel with them, even to take them to the schools or the college. So we need to look at if this also affect the female from not going to the vocational education. And also we look at how does the College of Excellence structure support female vocational education quality. In Saudi Arabia, the female education, they have got separate entity, and there is the presidency of female, or sorry, presidency of girl education, and this government body is just overseen and govern the girls education. However, when the vocational education is started, this the girl vocational education seen by the TVTC. So, and this create kind of conflict of interest at somehow. The study will, sorry. So the study, they're going to assess the enrollment and admission process in the COE female colleges. Because I work in this project for 5 years, and I was the coordinator of one of these colleges, the male colleges, but also our college run a female college. At the beginning of the course, we receive huge volume of applications, 1,000 student, female student applying to the course. By end of year 2, we end up to 50 girls going to the final exam. We need to see why this happened. Also, we need to assess the quality of teaching and learning in COE female colleges, because as a student, when the lesson is not interested, I'm not interested to come back to this lesson. Therefore, we need to see, is the teaching and learning promote the girls to come to the college. Also, we need to determine whether the COE qualifications are aligned with the job market. This one of the biggest issue we're facing now. The private sector, they are not appreciate or they don't recognize the new program certification, and they retain the student to other colleges to obtain local certificate. Even the quality of training is very high, delivered in English comparing to the other colleges, but still there is some issue of certification recognition. Also, we need to explore the job created for vocational education female graduates. As I said, the private sector until now, or as far as I know, they don't encourage the female graduates much. So why this coming from? There is some there is the hypothesis of this research. The socio-cultural factors in Saudi Arabia have a negative impact on female education. We need to see that, is it correct or not, to prove it via the data gathering, interviews, and quality and quantitative research methods. The awareness of vocational education program is not enough to attract female, because still there is a stigma on developing countries about the vocational education. They assume that the vocational education is not for the ordinary people, is only for the poor people or the people that they can't make it to the university. And this is absolutely not correct. We need to clear this understanding to the people there via initiative, via talking on social media, and have some kind of this talk there. Also, we assume that the structure of the College of Excellence and the international provider settings, they are not promoting the quality of vocational education, because you have got the TVTC, and the TVTC have got the College of Excellence, and the College of Excellence, they invited the international providers. Each international providers come with its own settings, because we seems like we working in isolated bubbles. This at some point does not encourage the learning and training process. Finally, the private and public sector don't encourage employing female with a vocational education diploma. Thank you very much for your listening, and great to see you all here.
Thank you so much, Yasin, for sharing your research and some of the sort of challenges with this project. I think this is maybe a prime example of how important it is to adapt a project to the local conditions, and just try to foresee what may work, what may not work, etc. So thank you so much for that. We will soon go to the questions part, but first Ella is very sporty. I asked her yesterday if she wanted to speak a bit about LIDC's internship, and she said yes, sure. So here's Ella joining us from Amman, who will just briefly tell us about the LIDC internship before we open up for questions and answers.
All right, so thank you very much, Goon, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, to wherever you may all be in the world right now. So yeah, as Goon mentioned, I'm just going to give a brief introduction about myself, and just a brief overview of my time at LIDC. Just give me 1 second and I will share my screen and put up my top. All right, and there we go. All right, so just a little bit about myself. My name is Ella Thane. So I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and then I moved to Nepal with my family, and I would say that my interest and curiosity for international development started during my time in Nepal specifically, not only because my family was involved in international development and economic recovery in Nepal, but also because everyone around me in the expat community in Nepal was working at organizations the like of the World Food Program, the United Nations, the IOM. So I, at a very early age, became acutely aware not only of the existence of international development, but also the need for it, and to encourage economic development, social mobility, political stability in developing countries around the world. So during my time in Nepal, while I was growing up, I took part in a lot of internships and volunteer work experience in Nepal. And then eventually I moved to Canada to do my undergrad. During this time, I also worked and did volunteer work in Canada for new immigrants coming into the country. And then I also went back to Nepal and took my first internship position at the Britain-Nepal Medical Trust in 2014, where I further became aware of the work that was actually being done in Nepal, particularly at that point in the health sector in Nepal. So the culmination of these experiences essentially led me to open a business where I took up a position helping women in remote Nepal, working with them and using their handcraft skills in Nepal to create jewelry that was exported to Canada and the US to large retail companies. And so through this work, we were essentially able to support and financially empower women. So the collective was around 375 women in rural Nepal. And the outcome of this position was that they were able to send their daughters to school and allow for additional channels of finance into their houses and into rural communities, which at that point, and in some cases until now, is still recovering from the earthquake that occurred a few years ago, and also still recovering from the political instability that occurred prior to the rural massacre and after the Civil War. So all of these experiences essentially led me to want to pursue a master's degree at SOAS University of London. So I actually finished my degree in 2020 during coronavirus. I was fortunate enough to earn an internship at LIDC in 2020. So I worked with Boone I was working as a communications intern, and I worked with Boone and Shireen in the communications department. So this is essentially where I will begin talking about the internship. So needless to say, my internship at LIDC was my second internship, and there are numerous benefits to any existing student or anyone who's interested in continuing education, looking into doing either a bachelor's degree, master's degree, or PhD, to looking into doing an internship, or even if you just graduated. So essentially, the benefits of doing an internship, there's quite a few here. So one of the most notable ones is it's actually to build your network. So you get to meet other people who are working in the sector that you may be interested in working in, right? I mean, I know a lot of us, when we're in school, some of us still may be unsure about what we necessarily want to do, or we have a rough idea, say, maybe, I don't know, you study accountancy and you say, well, you know, society's encouraged me that accountancy is a good position to work for. I would very much like to work as an accountant, but maybe it doesn't sing for you, right? So doing an internship in the sphere of, per se, international development, even though you're in a potentially unrelated field like accountancy, really brings together an understanding of not only one, what you may be interested in doing, but also two, how you may use your skills and then apply it towards a position in international development, and maybe figuring out your niche, right? And also then, not only that, but you get to meet other people who may have gone down a similar path as you, who were perhaps uncertain of what they wanted to do, and they can guide you or give you words of encouragement. I mean, it's been very interesting listening to Sam, Anders, and Yassine, who have all spoken of their different experiences, who've led them down the path to work towards international development, right? But even though each of them have come from a different background, all of them are now working in international development, can build upon, or is an example of how a variety of people coming together within the sphere of international development creates this vast expansion of a network, which you can definitely tap into during an internship, whether you're still in school or if you've just graduated. So moving on to the next step, an internship is definitely a positive addition to your CV. Yes, everyone is probably well aware right now, the job market is very competitive. I don't like to use that word, but it is in a way what it is. And more and more young professionals are coming out, recent graduates are coming out, and different people seem to have internships, volunteer experience. And so having an internship on your CV does essentially help you from a CV perspective stand apart and show some individuality, which may be positive when you're coming and looking for a job. I know from my past experiences, I've been able to secure jobs because of internships that I've done or because of volunteer positions, because it's also a testament to your character, that you're willing and able to take time out of your busy schedule and work towards, you know, helping people in international development through the work that you do. But also it shows that you may have developed a specific skill set. So for example, taking from my own experiences working at LIDC in the communications department, I worked with data that was gathered and synthesized from their social media networks, so focusing on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And so by better understanding LIDC's adherence towards enhancing its social media presence online, I was able to further understand and develop my abilities to decipher what international organizations and what specific organizations and think tanks may be geared towards focusing on when developing their communication platforms. So without my experience at LIDC, I may not be as well versed as I am now. So that is very much another reason for why young people and, you know, just anybody essentially should take time and try for an internship. Again, as I've already alluded to previously, internships are very good testament if you're uncertain about where you want to go and what you'd like to do, to test the waters, you know, because you're still in school and because you're still figuring out where you're going. I mean, figuring out where you're going is a lifelong journey, but essentially it gives you another avenue for which you can go and test and see, well, maybe I would like to work in banking, for example, or maybe I would like to work in IT, even though I'm coming from, I don't know, an economics background. So it really gives you an ability to see and discover yourself and discover work opportunities, and to really understand also the difference between bridging academia and academic studies and then transitioning into a work environment. So it really is a nice segue and a nice opportunity for you to enhance yourself, both characteristically, professionally, and also through the experiences that you may earn and through the people that you may meet. So that said, you know, I would encourage everybody of any age and any background to really try and pursue taking on internships, because the benefits are just unlimited. So as we are essentially out of time, that sums it up. If you have any questions, we will be around until the end. Thank you very much for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Ella, for outlining the benefits of internships. And it's very true what you say. It's an opportunity to try different things and see what works for you. So we will now open up for questions. So there are two ways you can do that. You can either pop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and then we'll get to you. And you can ask questions to anyone on the panel. We already received a few questions before the event, so I think I'll start with one of those. And the first one is, if a master's degree is a requirement to work in international development, or is it just beneficial? What are your thoughts on that? Maybe Anders, you did a master's specifically to sort of move into development. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Again, it will depend on what sort of organizations that you're applying for and what type of jobs that you're looking for. It's really very specific to the functions and also the organization. So, for example, for the UN, or a lot of times internship, they would require a master's degree, and it's not so much on the fact that they require that sort of level of education, but perhaps it's really just because it's so competitive and it helps with the process. So that for certain types of job, in that case, that is actually a requirement, and a lot of times it's a very hard requirement. But otherwise, I think there are also a lot of other places where it's just really something that's good to have. It really depends on organization and also the function. Yeah.
And Sam, so you did your undergrad and then you worked for a bit, you did some internships, and then you went back to do a master's degree. Was that something you felt you had to do, or was it more something you wanted to do?
Yeah, for me it was, I wanted to understand the structural reasons for the inequalities across the world, and I found that the development studies really helped me, particularly the one at SOAS, which focused quite a lot on economics. And although it's not a requirement for a lot of jobs, you do see it quite often, a postgraduate degree in development studies or something similar. So I think it's, as Anders said, it's a way of being able to cut down the number of applicants. But it does, one of the things recruiters always look for is a demonstrable interest in the particular area in which you're working. And so if you have your master's, then you have some way of demonstrating that you have an interest. The other route is through personal experience and just having that sort of work on your CV. I don't think it's essential, but I found that it was helpful.
Mm-hmm. So I will tweak the question a bit for Yassine. Is a PhD, is that sort of the way into development work? Does it open many doors outside of just sort of research?
Yes, definitely, yes. For example, if the student conducting a PhD during his journey, he can do some international development work. Myself, now I'm doing some work with vocational education in Saudi Arabia, and also I'm doing volunteer training to Sudanese people in Sudan remotely, because you know the coronavirus, we can't travel, so we can do this. This also, it opens the doors for the networking. You're going to meet new people, you're going to learn many skills, and also you can shift your career, because most of the people, they assume that when they finish the PhD, they just capped work in the academia, and that's not 100% correct. People, they can work in international organization, they can work in education sector in the developing countries, and yeah, there is many opportunity for them. Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you for that. So we have a question now from Emily. She wants to ask if we can give some advice on how to shift from doing an internship to landing a job. I'm sure many people are in this situation. She's currently doing an internship in an NGO and is moving back to her home country in September to look for a job in the field of public health. I think maybe Sam, you've been in this situation and sort of overcame it. Do you have any advice for Emily and everyone else who's in that situation?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I think Ella will probably sort of reiterate this, but the key for sort of leveraging your internship to actually getting a job is to look and think carefully about what are your transferable skills. What have you got out of that internship in terms of know-how, in terms of just being able to do quite practical stuff, who have you been interacting with and how, and obviously we don't know where Emily's home country is, but in terms of looking for a job in the field of public health specifically, there tends to be a lot of project work in public health, and you can, start at a sort of project assistant level, and then look to build up your contacts and just try and put yourself out there and demonstrate that you have a real, genuine interest in that field, so that I think, and I mentioned this before, that you're not just sort of trapped in this cycle of endless unpaid internships. But I would look to try and build up contacts, and use the opportunities that an internship or even a relatively junior job provide you with, to make contact with people who will potentially be recruiting in the future.
Okay. Anders, you have recently done this, gone from internship to consultancies. Do you have any advice for people who are in this situation?
Yeah, sure. I think again, is to really keep your options open, and again is to think about what skills are transferable. As Sam has mentioned, for example, in the past, in my banking experience, not a lot of it can actually move into international development. It's just so different. But I did a lot of projects when I was at in my banking work, and then at the same time, when I got the role at ACLED, and then I also continued building on my project management because I was involved in a number of projects. And I think that's really where you kind of start to build what you're already, I guess it just sort of just comes to you. You might not see it, you might not already see it, but I think it just kind of naturally comes to you, and you'll be like, oh, actually maybe I am quite all right at this, and it just comes. But I think in terms of very practical skills is to really keep your eyes out on what's coming out. I think a lot of times we're not as aware of what's out there in terms of what jobs there are or what consultancies there are. There are actually opportunities out there. And it's just to also keep your eyes out on what's out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you for that. So we're about to run out of time, but there's one question that I like to ask to all the panelists from Sinem. So I will start with Yasin, because Yasin has another meeting to go to. So Sinem says, thank you to all speakers for this insightful session. I'd like to ask whether any of the panelists have any regrets and or anything they would have done differently in terms of their career journeys in the international development field. So Yasin, I know you have to go, so maybe you want to answer first.
Yeah, this is very interesting question. Actually, there is no yes or no answer for this one, but it depends on the situation. It depends on many factors. Myself, when I started my master degree in 2010, everything was good, and I applied for forensic computing because the jobs for forensic computing was so high and it was so demand. So during that time, there was the credit crunch started, and all the economy has been affected by this, and the jobs has been shortened. to overcome this, I just shift to the training, and I found myself in the training. So I didn't regret completed my master degree. Either I didn't regret I moved to the training, because I found myself in the training. I use all my skills, and I learn a lot. So this is very you can't. There is no book to answer this question. So you need to think about what you need exactly, what you're capable to do this, and how you can do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good lesson. Sometimes you have to change your course depending
Yes.
on what happens. Sam, would you like to share anything on this? Anything you would have done different?
I mean, I did touch on this in my presentation. I wish I'd had more confidence in myself when I was younger, certainly. I wish I'd been a bit more pushy, just because I think I let a couple of opportunities slip through my fingers through thinking that people wouldn't be interested. And then, you know, seeing the people who got hired and their skill base was the same or less than mine, but I just ripped myself off because I didn't think that I had got that sort of level of experience at the time.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's the case for many people. So yeah, don't be shy to try. And the worst thing that can happen is a no.
Exactly.
Anders, yeah, sorry. Anders, what would you have done differently, if anything?
I mean, I don't have I mean, I'm still quite early on in this career switch. I mean, it's only been 2.5 years, or 3 years. But again, I echo what Sam said. You know, it's just really having more confidence in yourself. There are actually, if you're doing a career switch, for example, there are actually already skills that you have built. You know, if you might not see it as apparent, you know, that there are transferable skills, and there are actually skills that's there. And I remember beating myself up a lot during this period when I was doing the career switch and looking for jobs, and I was failing at it or not doing so well at it, and that was really difficult. But I think otherwise, I think one other regret that I felt that I could have done was to learn Burmese, which is the language spoken in Myanmar. I think especially in this situation with the coup and everything, it's been really difficult to get information from the other side. We don't know what's going on, and I just wish I had that language skills, you know, to communicate and also to be able to keep myself updated on what's going on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Anders. I agree. Learning languages, it's super helpful. It can be difficult, and I imagine Burmese is as well. But yeah, good advice. Ella, you'll get the final word. What would you have done differently, if anything?
I think everyone's provided very interesting information thus far. If anything, all I can do is just sort of build upon what's already been said. Definitely to what Yassine said is that I don't know if there's necessarily anything bad. It's essentially the lessons that you can take away from it. Having graduated in 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic has definitely been a challenging time to find a job. And also now I'm in a new country and I'm on Jordan and learning a new language and having to reintegrate into a new society. But, you know, again, taking those challenges and turning them into more of a positive opportunity. So now I'm trying to learn Arabic. I'm in Arabic courses and really trying to, Sam also mentioned, you know, to try when you're working in international development to integrate yourself into the society that you're working in. Or that you're also living in. And so really taking this as an opportunity to enhance my CV and to essentially take the challenges that you're faced with and try and turn the lemons into lemonade, as corny as it sounds. It's very true. And I think that, you know, anybody who is doing a career switch or transitioning at some point in their life from education or from an internship to a job is to just be patient and kind with yourself and understand that, you know, this is a process that everyone goes through. And that eventually, you know, of course you will have bad days and you'll say, oh my goodness, like, you know, I'm not gonna ever, this is never gonna end. But to reassure yourself and to really realize that one day this will come to an end and one day you will finally, you know, get over that hurdle and look back and be grateful for all of the trying times, but also the good memories that you have.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful place to end. Be kind to yourself and remember that you will get to where you want to be. So finally, I just want to say thank you so much to all the panelists. You've been really great. I'm so glad we had such a sort of broad background. So hopefully everyone in the audience has found someone that they can sort of look at and think, okay, that's an interesting path. That's something I might be interested in. Maybe gotten some ideas on what to do next, which maybe you start learning a language, etc. So we will post this recording on our website in case you want to revisit it. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend and good luck with your job hunt. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.